Hi friends, Dean here with Escape to Gaming. Today I'm excited to do a video response to a new friend. His name is Gruss Newton. Many of you guys in the UK are friends with him, and I've seen his name here and there and interacting, but I really didn't know who he was. Several times in the past you've heard me talk about the importance of, if you like someone's video, hit the like button. I don't push that on people. If people like my video, they'll like it. If not, that's okay. But the biggest reason why I like that is because you get to see what your friends like. So if you follow your friends on Twitter and they're following you, you'll see that they like someone's video and you go, oh wow, look, I didn't even know the dude had a video out. Gives you a chance to check it out. Well, my good friend Gashead Steve over in the UK, I was going through my Twitter thing just a few days ago and I saw that he liked a video by Gruss Newton, and it was his game room. I don't know if it was a recent video or one that he did a while back, but he remodeled his game room. He had very limited space, and it's one of the nicest game rooms I've seen. And if it wasn't for Gashead Steve simply liking the video and commenting on it, I never would have known about the dude's video or his YouTube channel. So I said, oh, that looks, I love to see people's game rooms. Let me check that out. So I watched the video, instantly subbed. The guy seems like a really cool retro gamer, and he took this wonderful little loft up in an attic with small vaulted ceilings, and he maximized his space, built a very clean and handsome array of cabinets, built-ins for his monitors and all of his consoles. Wonderful indirect little lighting. He's got like LED lighting or something in there, and everything is very well thought out, and I thought it was a wonderful utilization of space. But anyway, getting all over the map with this, but that's how I met this new friend of mine, Gruss Newton, on his channel, and since then I've been kind of watching the last couple of videos that he did. I got up this morning with my coffee and I saw that Mark Verger had done a video response to Gruss Newton's thing on a fascinating topic, which I thought was brilliant, and it was all about, have you ever bought a console just for one game? Is there any, and at first I thought that he meant that perhaps buying just a console for one game only, you don't buy any other games for it. But after watching the original video that Gruss Newton did, as well as Mark, and listening to both of them, I could see that it could mean not just buying just a console just for one game, but buying it perhaps initially because of one game. Maybe one system had a game, the other one didn't, or what have you. And I thought of it, and two games came to mind right away. But then I thought of it longer after I watched the videos. I was out running errands, and I thought it was a wonderful video, a video response that Mark Verger did on his channel. And I said, it's really a good question. And other than the two that I wrote down in the comments, I said, come to think of it, virtually every single console that I've ever bought was because of one game. And so I thought I'd do a quick video response. Some people know, my story and why I bought certain consoles, but just to kind of put it all in one nice, concise package, I thought I'd go through each one. Initially, and many people I have, good friends of mine I've talked to about this on YouTube and on Facebook, that I never had the privilege of having a Atari 2800. I'm sorry, Atari 2600 early on as a kid. My friends had them and had ColecoVisions and even Pong setups and all that, but my dad thought it was extravagant and a waste of money, so it wasn't for many years. I was 27 years old, and as an adult, I was kicked out at 17. It took me 10 years of my own to survive and get into apartments and buy an automobile to get to work and slowly get furniture and a little TV set. So it took me a good decade to finally, at 27, to save up and get my first gaming system. Well, in the early 80s, at first I was hell-bent to get the Atari 2600, and I still want one today, which it never materialized. And I've got to get one of those 6-switch deals, either the Black Vader one or the wood grain one. I don't care, but I've got to have one, and maybe a dozen Atari 2600 games. But even more important than that, the console that really had the most impact is my buddy conned his mother into getting him a Commodore 64. I think it was the early 80s. I'm guessing maybe 83 to 84. I don't know when the Commodore came out. I should know, but I don't. I'll have to research that. But he got one of the very first ones, and he told his mom, oh, I'll do my homework on it, and it showed on the box, you could do your schoolwork, and it's great for education and all this shit, who cares about that? I just want to play the games. So I go over to my friend, his name was Bart, his last name was Thompson too, ironically. Really good friends for many years. Went through a whole bunch of crazy antics and you know, lots of crazy things in behind the wheel in cars and stuff like that. He was a good dirt bike buddy of mine, and we worked on cars together and hot rodded cars and drove him 135 down the freeway and had a lot of fun. But when we weren't trying to kill ourselves, we were over at his place, or he was living with his mom at the time, and he had a little tiny TV set. It was like a 13-inch TV, and he had, it was a color one, and he had a little Commodore 64 set up, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I mean, as great as those Atari 2600 games were, the only game that I saw him play, he played a couple games, but the one he loved the most, and to this day, I would get try to get another Commodore 64 just to get this game, and it was a game called Barnstormer. Now, I've seen it on the 2600 and other systems, and I thought they were great, but this was kind of like an isometric, top-down, kind of a three-dimensional, kind of slightly top-down, looking down at an angle view of like little rivers and roads, and you could have this little biplane that could go up and down, and you could move it side to side, and you could drop down and go through a barn, pop up, go over telephone poles, under a bridge, you know, over a river, and there's other birds or planes or things coming at you. Very rudimentary graphics, very simplistic, but my God, we put in, you'd think we were playing like GTA 5 for, you know, hundreds of hours. It was just day after day. I couldn't wait to go over there after work. And my friend was a couple years younger, still living at home and all that, and I said, dude, you get the Barnstormer game? Oh yeah, I've been playing it, you know, day and night. So I'd go over there and we'd take turns playing it. I remember this one level, eventually you get to this long road, and this road would go into a city, and the music would change, and it was just like this wonderful adventure if you could make it that far. I only made it that far twice. You get into this whole different region. It would take just days and days of practice, but when I saw that game, to me, I said, that's it. That was a system seller for me, and it took me like 3 years. I think it was a good 3 or 4 years after that. I saved, and in the back of my mind, I said, I'm getting at a Commodore 64. That's it. And you know, God, PCs back then were $3,500 to $5,500 for a little monitor and a basic PC and a keyboard. Very expensive, and I couldn't do it. So the Commodore was an affordable PC alternative, and to me the graphics were mind-blowing with color and a little sound chip that had wonderful sound. I go, I want that Barnstormer. And ultimately I ended up getting one in '87, but what happened is that I never saw the Barnstormer game. Actually, someone had a CD of it I got years later, which I did eventually play on it, but right before I got that one, it was in early '87, my partner and business partner and friend in Redondo Beach, he had a little stepson. He just met this chick, and he moved in with her until I got married, and she had a little boy that was maybe 12 or 13 years old. Well, he had a Commodore 64, and I remember he had like 2 or 3 games. He had Paperboy, he had some other game I can't remember, and he had Silent Service. It was a submarine game, you know, kind of a sim game from Microprose. And once I saw that Silent Service game, I go, oh no, he had another one. It was called Mig Alley Ace. And it was like an F-86 Sabre jet, supposedly. They were so simplistic. They could have been little toothpicks, I mean, for all you knew. But to me, I saw them as F-86 Sabre jets over Korea. And they had a wonderful split screen, and we'd play that. That was one of the first games I got. But the system seller for me for that game, even after the original Barnstormer game, was Silent Service. You'd go down in the sub, and at the time, we just saw the Das Boot movie, which had been out recently, a couple years or so before, in the '80s, and that whole vision of being, you know, underwater, and the claustrophobia and the sound effects and the wonderful, you know, plotting your course and doing like an end round, you know, wait till sunup or sundown for a dust torpedo shot, and you're out in the, you know, the Sea of Japan and taking on these Japanese convoys, and oh my God, it was so incredible. I worked hard for months to save for that first system. I mean, it was a lot of money because I had bills, and down in LA the rents were really high, and I lived right down by the beach and had a new car. I had a Dodge 86 Dodge Daytona I was making payments on. Beautiful car. So I was kind of living to the max, to the edge, and so an extravagance like a game console was a big thing. But I'll tell you, that was a wonderful, wonderful console. I remember the first night I got that game home, my partner and friend, who I rented out a little sublet, a little apartment out behind his house, a 1926 house that he lived in Redondo Beach. Since then, it's been torn down. They built this big glass block Miami Vice quadplex in its place, sadly, but beautiful little place. I had a lot of wonderful memories living there for 18 months. Well, my buddy knocked up his, his girlfriend, got her pregnant, and they were going to have their first son. And he asked me, he said, Dean, I'm nervous. He's smoking, chain smoking cigarettes. He's really nervous. He says, would you mind watching Ian for a night, maybe two? Ian was his little stepson, the 13-year-old. And I was with my ex-wife at the time. We lived, behind the thing there. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to watch him. Yeah, as long as it takes. Handle whatever you got to handle. I'll be here and I'll watch your cat. He had a wonderful gray cat. He said, if you could fit, feed my cat for me and just watch Ian for a day or so, I'll be in touch. I'll call you on the phone, let you know how it's going. But she might be in labor tonight. I'm taking her to the hospital tonight. They're going to see if they can, induce labor. She had some complications, so they're trying to have the baby. And they ultimately had it that night. So, ironically, knowing that I had a couple days off, we said, well, let's just shut the business down for a couple days. You focus on that, and I'll take care of the home front, the house and the cat, and little Ian, the boy, a real precocious little brat, little SOB, real cocky and arrogant, rolling his eyes at you all the time, typical precocious kid. He's probably a computer scientist. His father, his real father, was a brilliant scientist who actually invented the little robots that went in and cleaned up the aftermath of 3 Mile Island, the accident. He was a brilliant scientist, and they would have him over for dinner. It was kind of a strange situation with the ex and everything. But anyway, I watched the little kid. The kid was a blast to be around, and I loved him because he loved video games. And so I said, you know what? I said, knowing I have 2 or 3 days coming up, and I told Ian, I said, I'm going to be here. I'm going to watch you for a couple days, bud, until your mom and dad come back with your new baby brother. I said, would you mind if I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a new Commodore 64, could I have it? Because they had a bigger TV. They had like a 27-inch, and I had a 19-inch JVC in my little, sublet place out back. And I said, could I hook up on your big 27-inch TV my Commodore 64? And I'm going to go buy some of the same games you have. He says, yeah, that'd be great. Hook it up, and sure, my dad won't mind. So I remember going down to Sears and buying that C64. I was so excited. I think it was like $500 or $600 at the time. I don't remember. I didn't save the box or anything. And I bought Silent Service and Paperboy, 2 of the games. And then later, when I could find it, they didn't have the Mig Alley Ace, but I eventually bought that one as well. And I went home that night, and I was so excited and opened my very first console. I mean, I had, tears welling up my eyes. I was so excited. And I got that Silent Service and that MicroProse box and put that in and saw it, that opening thing. And just because maybe it was because it was my system and my game, it was even more fun than playing it before. And I literally stayed up. We took turns playing that and some Mig Alley Ace, but I mostly played that Silent Service all night till the sun came up. And then I woke Ian up and made him breakfast, and we went back to taking turns at, Paperboy again and Mig Alley Ace. But we had so much fun playing that. That was like a magical, one of the most wonderful experiences of my life, was getting my very first console, which I worked so hard for, 27 years old. So I didn't have the luxury of living at home and getting, consoles at Christmas and games like a lot of my friends that have had those wonderful experiences getting a Sega Genesis and all that. But anyway, that was my first one, lengthy, but I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how special it was. But the Barnstormer, eventually a friend of mine ripped me a disc of it, because he had it, and then I finally was able to play it like a year and a half or so later. But initially, those early MicroProse games, and Airborne Ranger and Gunship was another one I bought. It was like one of the 3rd or 4th games I bought, along with Airborne Ranger and F-17 Stealth Fighter, I think it was, by MicroProse. A lot of these, military sims and flying sims and Gunship, and the sound effects, and playing it on my friend's, what I thought was a huge TV, 27-inch TV, was a real treat. It wouldn't be till many years, maybe about 4 years later, and I'd bought literally around 100 games for that C64, and it was a wonderful system. So I certainly didn't buy it for one game, but that Silent Service definitely was my impetus to get that very first one, and it was hell-bent to get it and enjoy that special 2 or 3 days off that we had. What was the next system? Was the Super NES. And I went to a friend's house. fact, I've got one right behind me here. I just relocated it. I found a really clean, non-yellowing one for $40 at my retail game store. They sell used games and consoles. I went over to another buddy's house. He owned a restaurant. I had met him and his wife. I had done some signs for their business. They had a sushi place, and they also had a Japanese noodle house down the street on Main Street in El Segundo. And I did a trade out for him for, you know, God, it was like $1,700 worth of sushi and sake, which I went through with my karate class. I treated everyone for about a week and a half. I burned through my whole $1,700 worth of trade on that. But anyway, I'm getting all over the map here. He had bought a Super NES. He was a couple years older than me, but he loved video games. He didn't have a C64, but he saw this game, Wing Commander, and he goes, Dean, you got to come over. He had one of these big projection TVs, which technically you were not supposed to play those console games on because you can get pattern burns. You get certain patterns that would burn into the screen. But he didn't care. He'd play it anyway. And he had, you know, to me it was huge. I mean, it was like a big, you know, big screen TV. Probably it's like the size of my 55-inch that I've got now. It was this giant, heavy thing. Probably paid millions of dollars for it. And he had his little gray and purple Super NES. And he said, Dean, come over. I know you like games. He says, I see you, you know, I've been to see your place. I saw you had your C64 set up to your little JVC TV. Come over and see my TV and my Super NES. Said, oh, you got one of those new Super NESs? Yeah, I saw the commercials for those. They're pretty cool. We had a game called Wing Commander. I had never seen it. Oh my God, we stayed up, I bet, till 2 or 3 in the morning playing Wing Commander. And there's something about the 3 dimensions in space with that spaceship. I felt like I was in a Star Wars, epic Star Wars film. It was so exciting. I immediately went out with like a week and bought my first Super NES. I think they were maybe $300. I can't remember how much they were, but it cost me a few bucks. Not as much as the C64, but a great console. And that was the only game I wanted initially. I bought that just for Wing Commander. And a little later they had, I think, F-15 Strike Eagle I bought, which I really enjoyed, and a couple F-1 games, like pole position type games. But ultimately a game about a year later when I moved from LA down to Orange County, they came out with Outlander, which was a wonderful game and one of my absolute favorites. I liked it even over Super Star Wars and all my other games. And Skate or Die. Well, Skate or Die was a C64 game, but I'm trying to think. I had some other kind of like skateboarding games for the Super NES. I can't remember what it was called. I had a pretty good stack, about maybe 30 inches high, of Super NES games. But my favorite later was Outlander, which is, I've seen, it looks like it's a better port of it on the Sega Genesis. But man, at the time it was like Mad Max on a console. And I absolutely loved it. Very clunky. Hard to maneuver the car, and Max would get out of the car, he'd run out of gas, you'd pilfer through these little towns. He had a shotgun, he'd whip out the shotgun and take down these biker thugs and chicks and what have you, and guys with mohawks, and you'd break open crates and, you know, find ammo and what have you, and gasoline. And I loved that game. But initially, Wing Commander was the big system seller for that one. But anyway, those are my Super NES days. And then years later, divorced my first wife, and then I met my wonderful wife and I'm with now. We've been married for over 20 years. This is in 1995, around the time the Heat movie came out, Michael Mann's Heat film, and Casino, and some other great movies. And there were tons, at the time we were really into staying up late and watching MTV and the Headbangers Ball, which I absolutely loved at the time. And they would have these commercials late at night, various times of the day, but I remember them mostly late at night on like Friday and Saturday nights, of the Panasonic 3DO. They had the Panasonic 3DO commercials, and then a little bit later, a couple months later, I started seeing these new Sony PlayStation commercials, which I'd never seen. So there were about 4 months where I saw the Panasonic 3DO commercials, and my mind was absolutely blown. I said, screw the Super NES, man, this is the future. These graphics look insane. And I was hell-bent. I spent months, I mean probably 6 months or so, saving lovingly for that $700, $699, whatever the hell it was, Panasonic 3DO. I was sold. To me, it was like the ultimate video game system. And that's what, when I'm the type where when I like lock on my laser beam, cruise missile, maverick missile, goal-oriented projection as to what I want in life. Nothing deviates me from it. I'm like, that's what I want. You can't sway me. I won't take no for an answer. If a roadblock gets in my way, I find a way around it, and I eventually lock on and I obtain whatever that car is or video game system or what have you. But I remember it was 6 or 7 months at least that I saved. It took, and back then, I mean, $700 would be like paying, let's say, $2,100. Can you imagine spending $2,100 for a console today? That's crazy. I mean, people would laugh, they bitch about how expensive, you know, $400 for a PlayStation 4. It's outrageous, you know. You know, they'll wait until it drops to $199, and by then, you know, they're on to the next system. But at the time, that was a tremendous amount of money. But I was hell-bent to get one. And knowing that I was getting one, I just started my own business back in '95, and I was getting some huge jobs where, I mean, every, you know, job was like $2,500, $3,500, $4,000. And I was doing these giant faux finishes in these restaurants and businesses and what have you. And I did this house in Palm Springs for like $5,500. It was a lot of money. I mean, it'd be like, you know, 15 grand today. And I said, finally, I'm going to get rid of this little, you know, 19-inch JVC TV that I have. I'm going to get myself a real television. And I went out and got a 35-inch Hitachi Ultravision in 1995 at Circuit City for $2,599, which is a lot of money. That would be, I mean, it'd be like paying $7,500 to $8 grand for a TV today, for a plasma TV or something. Had built-in surround sound, speaker, huge, heavy. It took 3 people to carry this thing. But I wanted something perfect for my Panasonic 3DO. No more playing on little TV sets for Dean. You know, this was more important than anything else. And I had a new Corvette at the time, and I bought a brand new black, you know, Chevy truck to match my black Vet. And I remember being really excited to get my first big TV, and I just moved in with my wife, and she had a big condominium. I painted the whole place, we redid the living room nice, and I said, finally, I'm going to have the ultimate gaming system. I was so excited. So we were ready to go down and do it, but they started ramping up these Sony PlayStation commercials. They're more frequent. I was seeing them like 3-4 times a day, especially, again, on MTV. And then I saw some clips for Twisted Metal, and Road Rash, and I think there was like Shockwave Assault or a few other little snippets of games, and I said, oh my God, we get a rival for the Panasonic 3DO. In fact, it looks almost the same graphically. All these wonderful three-dimensional polygon graphics. But we had a mall that was about about a mile and a half from our house, real close, called the Orange Mall. And there was a game store in there. I had seen it. I had never gone in there before. And by then, I had the, you know, the Super NES for quite some time. And when we first moved in with my wife, we hooked it up to the little 19-inch TV we had. And we'd take turns playing that. Had a lot of fun with it. So I was happy that my wife liked video games, because my last wife just kind of looked down at it. Like, what are you playing video games for, you know? But this wife was cool as hell. We'd have drinks, and we'd, you know, play our Super NES, take turns with it. Racing games in particular she loved. And she was excited. She goes, well, let's go down. You got the money now. You know, get our TV. Let's go get your Panasonic 3DO. And I go, not so fast. I think I might check into this Sony PlayStation, you know. And so we knew they had a giant, I think it was called Babbage's or Electronics Boutique, I believe, at the Orange Mall in Orange, California, in Orange County. So it was a mile and a half or so, right down the street. We went down there right after work on a Friday night. This is the first week of the PlayStation 1. It had been out maybe 3-4 days, sometime that week. And they're seeing commercials of the launch of it and everything. And I said, I don't even know if they'll have it. Let's just go down and look. If not, I'll just follow through and just get my Panasonic 3DO. Well, I'm sitting there looking at the games, you know, and I'm comparing the games, and I'm looking at the Panasonic 3DO. Oh, look, they have Return Fire for the Panasonic 3DO, but they have it for the Sony PlayStation. Okay. And they had Shockwave Assault for the PlayStation, which I have somewhere here, Shockwave Assault, the original PS1 game. But these were in the tall boxes at the time. But they also had it for the Panasonic 3DO. They had Need for Speed for the 3DO, and they also had it for, so it was like hard to decide. And I'm like, well, I think, looking at the back of the boxes, there were no like YouTube videos where you could see, you know, this digital foundry, you could see like video comparisons. So you had to really decide. I mean, this is a huge decision and a tremendous amount of money. I'm going to spend, you know, $700. It'd be like spending over $2,000 today. So this is a big, big moment for Dean. My wife she's just watching. She's just excited to see me happy because she knows that I'm going to get something I really want. And she goes, well, I like the racing games. I said, well, they got some good ones. And we're looking at the Need for Speed game. Well, one of the ones that I saw was this original tall box of Twisted Metal. And I go, Twisted Metal. I remember seeing snippets of this on some of the commercials for the new Sony PlayStation. And I love these boxes with this little corrugated, dimensional edge and just this nice big handsome box. So much nicer than the kind of flimsy Commodore 64 boxes or the little paper cardboard Super NES boxes, which you pretty much just throw the box out and the little insert and you just keep the cartridge. But these were so nice. I remember seeing this and I go, oh my God. And of course I couldn't open it until I got home, and I just looked at the back and it says, you are what you drive. And it showed all these wonderful cars, and then it even showed this behind the cockpit view with his hands on the steering wheel. And I looked at this and I saw immersion, and I could see myself inside that car and driving throughout these apocalyptic cities in chaos. And I'm looking at the little Corvette and the taxi cab and the lowrider where they had later discovered had the flamethrower, and the police car and the monster truck and this crazy ice cream truck. And I kept looking at this front cover and I said, my God, I said, I have to get the Sony PlayStation because it has this. This is like the perfect. I lived in LA, God, for years, and your temperature would just, your blood pressure would raise because the traffic was crazy. You wanted missile launchers. You wanted a 50 caliber machine gun to chew up the cars that were getting in your fucking way on the way home. So when I saw this, that's it. I mean, I wanted the Panasonic 3DO, and I'd spent months saving for it, but ultimately I bought this. So I bought this game, Road Rash, Return Fire, and Agile Warrior, which I have over here on my shelf. I rearranged my room recently. And I bought 4 games, the original Sony PlayStation console, 1 memory card, and an extra gray controller for $729. That would be over $2,100 today in today's money. And I was so excited. I'll never forget. I took my wife's little Honda 87 Honda Accord, which a brand new car she had at the time, and we got in that car with that gray interior and we're driving home, just not a very long drive at all. And I was so excited, and I got home and I just ripped the plastic off these, and I opened this up and I saw this wonderful disc with the bullet holes in it, and this gorgeous manual which I read on the toilet all night the next morning and while I'm with my coffee. And I was so excited. We hooked that sucker up with those 3 little RCA cables. You just had the right and left audio channel and the one, yellow channel for your TV, and, right in the front of the television of my big 35-inch Hitachi Ultravision. And in stereo, we were playing Twisted Metal. This is one of the ultimate system sellers for me ever. I never would have bought. I was hell-bent to get the Panasonic 3DO, but I was intrigued over the Sony PlayStation commercials. But it was this game that sold me on the Sony PlayStation. So, and the rest is history. And it's a good thing I did, because of 3DO another year, that pretty much had fizzled out. But I still want one today, and I would get just a few games, maybe 4 or 5 games. I would definitely get the Need for Speed game, Road Rash, maybe Shockwave Assault, and I would get Return Fire. There's just a handful, 4 or 5, maybe 6 games tops for the 3DO, just to experience it. But man, I'm glad I got the Sony PlayStation. And then once I got acclimated with all the wonderful games on it, which I still love the PS1 today, it didn't take a lot of rocket science to know that the Twisted Metal Black, now this is a greatest hits, and this is certainly not my original one, which I donated, I think, to Classic Gamer, or maybe I gave it to a nephew. But the PS2, a few years later in the late 90s, or no, I think it was 2001, I guess, I went out and bought the PS2 just for Twisted Metal Black. It was a system seller, Twisted Metal, for me. Just like some people like, Forza on the Xbox or Halo or what have you. This, or even Gran Turismo, which I love Gran Turismo 1 and 2 without a doubt, and I love Gran Turismo 3, but I bought initially, at the time we were a little broke, we just moved out to the desert. I got a new house that we bought. I had a whole, 5 cars at the time. I had a lot of money going out for a lot of things, so my money was tight. But I bought at launch, the brand new PlayStation 2 which I've got one behind me here, one of the original Fat models that my wife got me, a couple of years ago for Christmas. And I bought just the one game, and for 4 months, that's all I played was Twisted Metal Black. Now, I ironically have this for the PlayStation 4 and on the PlayStation 3 digitally downloaded, and it still looks and plays amazing today. I even have the original strategy guide for this. But I was so content with this one game for 4 months, I never even bought any other games. And then I think I bought the, in fact I have the big box with the headset. I got the SOCOM Navy SEALs game. You could talk to your little guys with a headset. That was one of the first games I bought for it. And certainly, Gran Turismo 3 when it became available. And Red Faction 1 and many other games. But, the Twisted Metal was twice over a system seller for me. So that's my PS1 story. So by that time now the Xbox had been out and the N64. The N64, I really had no interest in it. My nephew had one, and he had that pod racing game. I don't know what it was called. Maybe it was called Pod Racer, but it was off the Episode 1 Star Wars, and he had the pod racer, and I came, so close to getting an N64 just for that Star Wars pod racer game. Now since then I've got the PlayStation, what is it called, Racer's Revenge, which is the same concept, which was out for the PlayStation 2 and I believe the GameCube, but it wasn't on the Xbox. And I have that recently. I got downloaded that digitally for the PlayStation 4. But I had no reason to get an Xbox, and again, without YouTube, I didn't know graphically that the Xbox was better. I had heard that, kind of on the street level. Friends of mine, oh, Dean, I have the Xbox. I think the graphics are a lot better than the PlayStation 2. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I've got my PS2. I love it. I don't see myself getting an Xbox. I didn't understand what the Xbox was and what it was really capable of. Some people said it was like a computer, and I was kind of confused, and the confused mind typically says no, so I kind of forgot about it. But we went out to a movie theater one day, and we saw a brand new movie called Land of the Dead by George Romero. And I always see his movies day one. I saw, Dawn of the Dead at the theater in '79, late '78, whenever it was. And I saw, Day of the Dead the first day it came out. And then the Night of the Living Dead reboot back in, late 80s or 1990, I think it came out. So I was very excited to see this Land of the Dead game. And right before the movie started, they showed a trailer. What did they show a trailer for? Land of the Dead, Road to Fiddler's Green. And it says, coming only on Xbox and PC. And at the time, I wasn't interested in PC. I had a really bad experience with my 2004 Dell PC. I played a Ubisoft game called Silent Hunter 3. The game crashed so hard, it destroyed my 9-month-old computer. Just fried it. And since then, I've never liked PC gaming. I'm sure it was just a fluke thing. But I've had other friends tell me they've had games that have crashed and actually corrupted and destroyed their computers as well. So based on that, I never touched PC gaming again. Except for a few titles I got on Steam just to have them, which I have in my last computer. I haven't switched them over to this one yet. But when I saw the trailers for this, I said, that's it. I've got to get an Xbox. I've got to be in a George Romero movie and play against zombies. This is the grandfather of all zombie FPS games. As far as I'm concerned, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, as wonderful as they are, and Dead Island, Riptide, and Dying Light, all of them, they've ripped off this one, because this is the original FPS zombie game. Yes, I like Resident Evil 1 and 2. I never played the other ones, never cared to. And those were great because of the zombies and everything, but they were slow moving. You had 2 bullets in your gun. I never really cared for that aspect of it. That's why I lost interest after Resident Evil 2, but this was this is one of the biggest system sellers, just like Twisted Metal was for the PS1. And I said, I have no choice in the matter. I won't get this on PC, but you better damn well believe I'm going to get an original Xbox to play Land of the Dead. I got that system the day this came out and bought the game. I think it was in late October of 2005. Ironically, a week or so later, they came out with the Xbox 360, which I didn't know about because, again, I wasn't on the internet back then. But I love this game, and the first week I played it, I had like a psychotic break. I played it, day and night, and I remember going to sleep one night, and I woke up from a nightmare from this game, and just freaked out, and I had to put the game away for a week. I couldn't touch it. But I played this game for a couple months before I even bought another game, very much like I did with Twisted Metal Black on the PS2. And this game is what changed my mind about the original Xbox, which I had no interest in getting. If it wasn't for this game, who knows, I might have missed the Xbox and probably wouldn't even have gotten an Xbox 360. Because I was kind of a diehard, you know, Sony PlayStation person. I had like 4 PS1s and 5 PS2s at the time. I lived in the desert, a lot of dust. Jack with a laser, so I'd have to replace them. And initially I sent them back to the factory, and after a while I just went down and just buy new ones. But I'm glad that I gave this a chance. Now this is a hated game. It's got one of the lowest Metacritic scores, but it's one of my favorite original Xbox games. I recently found a very clean and mint complete copy of this for $20 at my game store. Now they're going for like $100 and $70, and I mean for real clean and mint ones like this. Very happy to have this. I absolutely love this game. I even printed out the original fax things on my old printer. The complete walkthrough of this with those little facts in black and white. But a wonderful game, and it's really converted me and sold me on the Xbox. If it wasn't for this, I might not have ever played Forza and many of the other wonderful Xbox exclusives. So that's my Xbox story. So what's funny is after watching Gruss Newton's video, I mean, I came to realize that every single console I have bought specifically for a game. There was a motivating factor. I might have bought the console anyway, but ultimately there was a concrete one game in mind, sometimes two, that sold me in each system. Well, around this time, a little bit later, now we're looking at like 2008 or so, I started getting on the internet around 2008, right before 2009. And started seeing screenshots, and I had played on, actually on the PlayStation 2, I have it over there, I've got this Wolfenstein Operation Resurrection, which is a wonderful, Wolfenstein Return to Castle game that was an exclusive for the PS2, and then later they had the Tides of War, which came on the Xbox. So quickly, the Wolfenstein franchise became my favorite FPS. It really was the game, along with The Road to Fiddler's Green, that sold me on FPS games, where pretty much before I only liked third-person shooters, along with the original Red Faction 1 and 2. So I started seeing screenshots and reading about, I was dying for another Wolfenstein game, and then I see things on this 2009 Wolfenstein reboot, and I just said, oh my god, this is going to be incredible. And to me, the graphics look so realistic. I mean, we take so much for granted today, with the wonderful graphics and production quality visually and audibly on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. But at the time, the original Xbox, like I mentioned some of my rants, I could never afford to buy one. They were like $1,000 on eBay. People were buying them up. They had limited supply. They were trying to get $900 to $1,000 or more for them on eBay, the greedy bastards. And I know people that bought them, several of them, intentionally with that goal to sell them, which I've never liked. People that brag about that, I question. I don't like to do that. I don't like to take advantage of people for the sake of money, especially within a hobby that I love. But I couldn't do it at the time. We were going through financial problems, and I can't rationalize spending $800 or $1,000 on an Xbox 360. So I waited and waited and waited for years. Well, ironically, the day the price dropped down from $299. Maybe it was $399 to $349. I can't remember. The price dropped substantially on the Xbox 360s. I think they went from $399 to $349. Was the day that the Wolfenstein game in 2009 or in August or so, in September it came out, and I went out and I bought that day a brand new, I think it was 120 gigabyte Xbox 360 Elite, which now my friend Mikey at his Mad Max 09 channel, he has that actual console and the original controller, which still works. But I bought that console just for this one game. And just like I had bought my brand new Hitachi 35-inch Ultravision TV just to play the Twisted Metal game, I went out and bought a brand new, after 10 years, my Hitachi Ultravision went one day in a little thin line, and that was it. The TV was done. So I was forced to get a new TV, and by now they have these wonderful new Samsung flat screen LCD TVs, which I have in their master bedroom now. And I said, this game is too important. I said, sweet, let's go out and get a new TV. Now, we had a smaller TV, which I play by my desk now, a little Insignia. It's kind of a Best Buy brand, little 26-inch or something TV. It's small. but the graphics on it looked incredible. And when I first got this game, I saw that for the first couple days I had played this game on that little TV, and my mind was blown away at how incredible the metals looked and the lighting and the realism, the way the light would gleam off the guns and the light coming, you know, through the windows and what have you. And I just said, I've got to get a big TV. So I went out and got a not only was this a system seller for me to get an Xbox 360, but it, again, motivated me enough to go out and get a very expensive, like a $2,600 Samsung, you know, top-of-the-line 2009 TV, which was discounted. It was an open box. One bought it. They didn't like it. They wanted a 52-inch and brought it back, but it had the remote still in the plastic. It was out of the box, but I got a great deal, like $1,100 on it. So, I mean, this TV, this game caused me to spend a lot of money on a new TV and an Xbox 360. So it really definitely was a system seller. And also, even though this was my, 80% of the motivation, I had seen so many commercials for this Call of Duty 2, and I just said, my God, and I could have played the Call of Duty 3, on the original Xbox, which ultimately I did later down the road, but and then since then I've played it about a year ago on the Xbox 360. But when I saw the commercials for this Call of Duty 2. And the first Dead Rising, which ironically I've never played, but initially that was a big system seller for me to get an Xbox 360. But this game and Call of Duty 2 were the biggest reasons, and Forza 2 I might add as well, which I love and I bought recently. I've been replaying, I'm quite a ways into that, but Call of Duty 2, the graphics look so incredible. It's still one of my favorite Call of Duty games today. And so this game was really a system seller, and this was a close second to it. The two of these made me get an Xbox 360, and at the time I had heard about this Red Ring of Death thing, but with the Elites and the 2009 advent of the new Falcon chip that was soldered better and a much better chip itself, I'd never had a problem. And frankly, I don't think from 2009 on, many of those Xbox 360s were very, very reliable, and you really didn't have an issue with them. So those were definitely system sellers. And I had friends, my father-in-law had a PlayStation 3, and he goes, I'd go down and see him, and we'd play Tomb Raider Underworld, and we'd play their very first Assassin's Creed, and so many wonderful games. Oh, and the very first Uncharted, too. And Uncharted 1 and 2, we had played on his, he had the same TV, but it was a 52-inch Samsung top-of-the-line TV, LCD, and then he also had the PlayStation 3, one of those big fat ones with a nice silver and black, that could play, PS2 and PS1 games and all that. Well, he had the Uncharted game initially, and then I saw the Tomb Raider Underworld and played it on. I was sold, and I played there was another Heavenly Sword, was another beautiful game. So I was sold on the PlayStation 3, but they were a lot of money, and I couldn't afford it. And every time I'd see him, he goes, "Dean, I'm surprised you're such a big gamer. Why don't you have a PS3?" And I go, "Well, frankly, I can play everything I want on the Xbox 360." And by then, I was on the internet, and I knew it was pretty common knowledge that the Xbox 360 had much better graphics on most of the games. Now, certainly the exclusives on the PlayStation 3 are optimized very well with that cell architecture, and they look fantastic. But most of these games had less screen tearing and a better frame rate on the Xbox 360. So I didn't want to tell him that and get in a war with my father-in-law because he's a huge gamer in his mid-70s. But anyway, a couple years later, they were coming out with a new game called Twisted Metal. Well, he had heard from my wife, because when I saw read about this coming out, my reboot, finally, after all these years of Twisted Metal Black, and the last brand new PlayStation 2 game, which I have over here on the shelf, was Twisted Metal Head On, which also had some of the lost levels of Twisted Metal Black. So I was very excited about seeing what they were going to do on a modern system with, certainly on the Xbox 360, but for the PlayStation 3, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to have to get a PlayStation 3. I know they're expensive, and I didn't realize the price actually had dropped down substantially by the time this came out. So I was all set to get this, but it was a tight Christmas. That Christmas this came out 2011, I'm thinking maybe, around there, 2012. This came out on Valentine's Day. Well, my father-in-law came up to Sacramento from Southern California, and he goes, "Dean, I want to see you. I'm going to be up staying at your sister's, but I'd like to come by for a day or so and visit." I said, "Yeah, come by. We'll make a nice big batch of chili. We'll have some beers, and you can play my Xbox 360. I'll show you some of my favorite games that I've been playing lately." Well, he surprised me. He said, "Oh, Dean, I'll be right back. I got something on the car I got to get. I'll come right back." And he came in this big box. He goes, "Here." He said, "It's kind of a late birthday present. Considering your birthday was right after Christmas, but here's a gift for you." I opened it up, and it was a brand new, I think it's 120 gig PlayStation 3. And I was so excited. It was the first Slim before the Super Slim, and I still have it today, and it works exceptional. And he went out and he bought me this Twisted Metal game, and he got me a couple other ones. I think Resistance 1 and 2, and some other games that had been out, because by then the system had been out for a while. But this was a system seller, so he knew I was going to buy one. He wanted to save me the money. God bless him. So he bought me Twisted Metal and the PlayStation 3, which I would have done myself. He just beat me to the punch, because he's a big, PlayStation 3 and 4 advocate, and give me a lot of his PlayStation 2 games when he got his PlayStation 3. So this, if I had no other reason to get a PlayStation 3, I would get it just to play this. Now, I don't like the story mode, and I never finished it. I got about halfway through it. But I love the challenge mode, where you can go in and you pick the levels you want, you pick the loadout, the cars, you pick the enemies against a whole bunch of random enemies, against just the 3 or 4 types that you pick out. You can pick out your co-driver, the weapons he carries, you can customize your car. So when you do it the way you want, it's like playing the old Twisted Metal, but instead of a story mode, you just custom pick out any of the levels. You can do the levels short, you can do the whole complete level. And to me, it's a wonderful game. I would get a PlayStation 3 just for this game and for MotorStorm Pacific Rift, if no other reason. I love the PlayStation 3, especially for some of its exclusives. Now that I have the Uncharted series for the PlayStation 4, I really have I got rid of my PS3 ones. But there are some wonderful exclusives on the PlayStation 3. But this definitely was a system seller. And if my father-in-law hadn't beat me to the punch, I would have got it just for this one game. I didn't even know about the MotorStorm games at the time. So that's a story on this. Now, by now the Xbox 360 is kind of worn out, the end of its cycle, and the PlayStation 3. Now we got these new E3s. They're talking about the new Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. Which one am I going to get? Well, I was really kind of an Xbox person by then. But I was really concerned over hearing about all the TV-type apps and things, and the Kinect, and you use your hands to move the screen, and the Kinect's watching you all the time, and I just didn't like it. So I had many reasons why, mostly the George Orwell 1984 thing. I was really somewhat paranoid about this camera that's watching me all the time, and the government could be, in cahoots with Microsoft. I mean, a lot of it is that tinfoil hat type stuff, but I had legitimate, valid concerns over it. And the price was more money. I didn't have a problem with the price, but so I had to pick out a system that worked for me. I didn't like the always online initial thing that the Xbox One was going for. So for me, I could only afford one system, so I decided to get the PlayStation 4. Now, what's interesting is initially, why would I get a PS4? I was very happy with the Xbox 360, even though I got it late in its cycle, and I'm very happy with the PlayStation 3 as well. But I started reading early on screenshots from Machine Games of this upcoming Wolfenstein: The New Order, and I saw how great the graphics are. And even though I knew they were going to have it on the old Xbox 360, I said, just like it was with, Call of Duty 3 and The Godfather. Yeah, you could get it on the original Xbox, you can get it for the Xbox 360, you can get the Need for Speed Most Wanted for the Xbox 3, the original Xbox, or for the better Xbox 360. I said, for this game, just like I got an Xbox 360 just for this, I've got to get a PS4. So this game was pushed back. It was supposed to be out by Christmas of, what was it, 2013, I guess it was, or whatever it was. But the game got pushed back. I didn't know that at the time, and I said, God, what happens if it was like the PS3 and the original Xbox 360, where there's a limited supply and they're sold out and they're all going on eBay for $1,400 or whatever. I was nervous, and I didn't want to lose out. Little did I know Sony was planning on it and went way overboard with the production. But just in case, I pre-ordered a PlayStation 4 just for this one game. But around the same time I started seeing stuff for this, I started seeing wonderful screenshots for the new Mad Max game, which was only going to be, I think initially it was going to be on the Xbox 360 and PS3, but later Avalanche changed it, and you saw it was going to be a next-gen game only. So these two games, not even just one, almost equally, both of these were my biggest reasons and impetus for getting a PlayStation 4 and for pre-ordering, because I did not want to overpay. I said, I'll be damned if I'm going to be in that situation again. Oh, I'll wait, you know, and get one at Christmas. And then all of a sudden now they're going for big bucks. The stores are sold out of them. Little did I know that, you know, today they mass produce everything. But so anyway, that's my reason. So I kind of came to think of it, and I said, geez, I've actually bought, there's been a real reason for every single system for me to buy a console. Is all based typically initially on one game, and then later, months later, quite often, like Twisted Metal Black, I didn't have any other games for 4 months. So, you know, Gruss Newton, this is a fascinating topic. I take my hat off to you, mate, for coming up with a really good, fascinating look at why we do things as gamers. I mean, there's reasons for everything. And it's been interesting just reading the comments on his video and Mark Verger's video on his VR. And I initially put very similar things in both videos in the comments about how I pretty much, you know, bought Twisted Metal and Land of the Dead. But I came to think of it, I said, I had a lot more games than that I bought for the console. So this is my long-winded little VR on it. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant notion. And it really deserved a proper VR. I love to talk in front of the camera and do these ridiculously long vlogs. Some of you like them. Some of you probably wish they were considerably shorter. But I had to add my 2 cents anyway. I've been slowly getting into this offline modes in this Star Wars Battlefront, and I absolutely love it. I want to do, I had planned initially on doing a video today, doing a game room tour of all the changes I've made in my game room, as well as talking about, you know, the Star Wars Battlefront, but I just was so tired. I've been really wiped. I had a really hellacious week. We spent all week doing errands. I washed my wife's car and my truck this morning and went over to my sister's for her husband's birthday. I've just had so many things going on. I was going to go home. I told my wife, I'm not even doing a video. And then I got home and I saw Gruss Newton was kind enough to comment on my comment on his video. And I said, I got to do a VR this week, bud. I'm going to try to get it out as quickly as I can because it really is worthy of a good quality video response. So anyway, that's my lengthy deal. Let me know in the comments, what consoles did you buy based on one game or 2 games? How long was it that you just had the one game? Was it, you know, weeks or months later where you eventually bought other games? Some of you might have just bought a console just for one game only, and maybe for a year or so never bought any other games. I'm curious. Oh, and one more I might add. A good buddy of mine, George, over in Greece, he surprised me with a wonderful Nintendo 3DS XL, European version. And he goes, Dean, what games would you like? And the only game that stuck in my mind where I almost bought one when they first came out was that Steel Diver game in 3D. So I said, man, I would love that Steel Diver. And he got me Driver Renegade, which I really wanted bad too. So he actually sent me 4 games, but that's another one that I would add to the list. I've got it here somewhere. I don't know where. Oh, it's over there. Steel Diver. So that would be a system seller for me, even though I didn't buy the game. And thank you again, George, for that wonderful game. That's the one game I played the most and found it the most tranquil and relaxing when I had my back surgery. And there's many months I couldn't sit at a console in my couch and game. I had to play laying down, and I'd play with that little stylus and play Steel Diver. So that would be a system seller for me. I almost got a Wii U just for the Zombie U game, too. I did. Now I can get it on the PlayStation 4, which I may get the PS4 version. That almost was a system seller. I was waiting to just see 2 or 3 other titles that did it for me. I'm not into some of the cutesy Mario type games, so I wanted more like things that were clever, like the, you know, that Ubisoft's Zombie U. But there really was nothing that pulled me enough to spend the money for a Wii U. I still would kind of like to get one in a way, but we'll see. Maybe there's more games out now. But anyway, that's my lengthy deal on this. Leave in the comments any games that were responsible for you getting a particular console. I'd love to hear of it, and certainly watch the 2 wonderful, you know, videos below, Gruss Newton's video and Mark Verger's video, and they're both brilliant, and I really enjoyed their take on it as well. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll try to have more content each week. Usually, if I'm lucky, I can get one of these videos out a week. After you kind of do them on a Sunday, it's the only day I have off now. And nights, I come home from work and I collapse. I'm just exhausted, so it's hard for me to do videos. I'm very tired now. I have to pardon my sleepiness. but I wanted to get this VR out. So thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate it, and enjoy your games. Thanks.